What is up, YouTube? This is T-Quentin1 coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to talk to you about Rogue One, the first Star Wars anthology film. I was excited for this film, mainly because it was Star Wars, though, but I was incredibly skeptical of this creative team because it seemed like a recipe for disaster, quite frankly. Gareth Edwards directing and Chris Weitz and Gary Whitta doing the script, that was a huge red flag. But somehow, they pulled it off. Rogue One is definitely not as good as The Force Awakens, but it's pretty solid in its own right. It's also way different than your traditional Star Wars fare. It's darker, grittier, focuses on people that are a bit more morally gray than I'm used to, and there's a sense of understatement to Gareth Edwards' direction that I also kind of like. The biggest positive in this movie, though, is that the crew of Rogue One are a pretty likable bunch. My personal favorites were Alan Tudyk as K2, a reprogrammed Imperial droid. Most of the laughs from the movie come from him. And Donnie Yen as Imwe, this blind devotee of the Force, and I thought he was really interesting. While most of the laughs come from K2, not all of them. Like Force Awakens, there is quite a bit of humor here. And while, yes, the film is darker, I think most of the funnier scenes feel natural and fit the movie well. And without spoiling anything, I really liked that this movie wasn't white hats and black hats. As I said, there's a bit more moral gray area here, and the rebellion does some things that are kind of questionable in this movie. The action scenes are also pretty good, especially the third act of this movie, which is basically one giant awesome battle, and it's quite frankly awe-inspiring, I must say. It's the highlight of the film by far. And the movie is also really emotional. I'm not going to spoil anything again, but let me just say people were on the edge of their seat by the end of this movie. It is really investing, and then that ending is just perfect. But, as I said, it's not as good as The Force Awakens, and the biggest reason why is the pacing. Especially in the first act, which is the main thing that holds this movie back. The first third of this movie is just boring. There's no two ways about it. While the awesome finale makes up for a lot of its shortcomings at the beginning, for the most part, it just dragged way too much to get there. The first third is also really unfocused. It jumped around a lot, and I just think it was kind of sloppy. Also, there's a couple unnecessary flashbacks that just feel shoehorned in. Speaking of that, there are several characters I feel are wasted in this movie, like Bail Organa. I was excited to see Jimmy Schmidt's back in this, but he doesn't really do anything. Or the worst example, Darth Vader. I was really pumped for James Earl Jones to come back, but he is the definition of shoehorned in. He contributes basically nothing to this film. On top of that, the costume just really sucks. You can even see where the helmet and the fabric of the costume separate, and that is just amateur shit right there. There's no excuse for that. Another one is Saw Gerrera, who, quite frankly, Forrest Whitaker just turns in a pretty bad performance here. I don't know what he was doing. He was just bizarre. There's a couple elements that are introduced and then dropped. All in all, though, Rogue One works well. It's not perfect, but it's definitely worth watching. It breaks some new ground for the Star Wars saga, and I would recommend it. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. This is T-Quentin1, signing out.